And hello everyone, welcome back to another C++ tutorial. So in the previous tutorial we talked about arrays. If you have not yet seen that tutorial, I do recommend you do, because in this tutorial we will be working with them as well. So here we have our code from our previous tutorial. We can just comment it out for now. Next up, we can start doing some C++. Now this tutorial will be about loops. Loops are basically just something you use to rerun code multiple times but with different values, or just to rerun it multiple times. Almost like a function. However, it's a little bit different. Let's start with the for loop, and I'm going to let C++ complete this for me. Now here we can just change that to int, we can keep that the same, we can make this 5, keep that the same, and here we go. So this right here is a for loop. It's one of the two loops we will be talking about today. A for loop is very simple in the fact that everything is right here. So let's actually do this. Cout, and we just cout I. And then I'll explain all of this in a second. Now if I were to run this, then we get 0 to 4. Now let's explain this. Let's actually break it up into steps. First we're saying int I is equal to 0. That's what we're saying. Then basically we're saying while I is less than this. So we are kind of in a sense saying if this, then we're saying I++. Now that means we can go I++. And for those who don't know, I++ is short for I plus equal 1. And for those who don't know, I plus equal 1 is short for I is equal to I plus 1. So that is what we're saying here. This is this entire line. However, C++ will basically run everything multiple times in here until this is true. So currently it's false because I is 0 and 0 is less than 5. As you can see on the first loop it's 0, then here on the end it will do something such as I++. So this I++ is at the end. So yeah, now you can do another cool thing, so let's just put some text here. I am cool. Now this will print 5 times that I am cool, as you can see there. So this just runs a set amount of times. It's as simple as that. Now of course it can also be used for more than just that. For example, let's say I want to loop through this array here. Now usually if I want to display something inside of that array, I will have to do that, and that displays everything. However, what if we were able to bring this to one line? Well, that would be simple. So we already know how to get the size of this. So we can go int our size is equal to friends, or size of friends, divided by size friends at index 0. Now we know from the previous tutorial that this right here will calculate the length of this right here. So let's just quickly comment everything out again, and just to see if we do get the right length, which is 5. So cout our size. Now if we run this, we get 5, so it is correct. Now of course you could have done this inside of that, but we are going to put it inside of this variable here just to keep things simple. Now what we can do is we can remove these right here because we won't need them anymore. Actually, we'll keep 1 just because then we don't have to type as much. Okay, then we can delete the rest. Now here we can just say, well, it is less than our size. Not less or equal to, but less than our size. Because arrays start at index 0, as we know from the previous tutorial. And since this array is 5 items long, it will start at index 0 right here and end at index 4. So we don't say less or equal to, because if we made this less or equal to, it will go up until 5. But as we know, this right here doesn't end at index 5, it ends at index 4. If you don't quite understand what I am talking about, then I do recommend you go watch my previous tutorial on arrays. Now here, we can just indent that a little bit, and now instead of saying 0 here, we can say I, because I is just a number, and we were passing in numbers before. Now if we run this, now that's pretty neat. Now I said that I want this to be in one line, so everything except this array should be here. Now just to show you how cool this is, I can make this one line. In fact, I can probably do this. And then here, I can remove that, put that there. And right now, I've done all of this in one line. As you can see, it still works. So that is just how cool a for loop is. So instead of having to write out 5, 10, 100 lines just to display everything in an array, you can do it all in one line. You can of course do more than what I showed you. For example, you could add more things here. So let's go cout begin, and then as well cout end. Now with every loop, it will say begin and end. We can even, before we start the loop, we can say loop, and then after we finish the loop, we can say /loop to say the loop has ended. And now you'll get this. So we first get loop, then we get begin, the name, end. Begin, the name, end. So this will all now be repeated by this for loop. So everything inside of these brackets will get repeated. You may have noticed before I did remove these brackets when I made it one line. You could do that, and it works, but I do not recommend you ever remove these brackets, because usually it's just easier to avoid bugs. But if you do want to remove them, you can have about one item inside of the for loop before it starts breaking apart. So if you only have one thing you want to do, then you can remove these brackets, then it doesn't matter. But I also recommend just moving it here to the side so you know it's a one-liner. Anyhow, so that's a few things about the for loop. Cool. I hope you all got that. If you don't, I do recommend you play around with for loops because they're really simple and they just work in a really easy way. Nice. Now, let's talk about while loops. Currently, we know how a for loop works, but we do not know how a while loop works. For example, we can say while true, and in console.log, not console.log, this is in JavaScript, cout hello world. But what will happen now is that forever while this program runs, it will print out hello world. So this is an infinite loop. An infinite loop is a loop that never ever breaks. What you can do, however, is you can go here and say int count is equal to 0. And in here you can say count plus equal, just count plus plus, that works as well. And then here you can also say cout friends at index count. This will work perfectly fine. However, you'll notice if you're a quick learner that this right here, this will cause a little bit of a problem. Because if this loops forever and never stops, then this right here will always increment. So even once we run out of items in the array, it will still try and get more items. So if you run it, as you can see, we get a random mess of spaces at this point. So what we can now then do is say, either at the top or at the bottom, both of them will work, if, and here we can say count is more than r size. So if count is more than r size, let's make it, yeah, this is probably fine. Then break. This will break out of the loop. Break basically means skip the loop. Don't continue with the rest of the loop. And if you want to, you can do the same as what I showed you earlier with this if statement. However, I never recommend this. I always recommend using your brackets when you can. However, you may notice this will actually cause a little bit of a problem. So we should actually go if count is more or equal to our size minus 1. Because this says basically once we reach 4, we should break out of this loop. The reason for this is we don't want to go to 5. So if we say less or equal to our size, it will go up until 5, or more or equal, not less or equal. So it will go up until 5. Remember, we have 5 things in here, but it starts at 0. So just take note of this if statement break here. If we run it, you'll notice it stops after a while. And actually, I was wrong. It does not have to be minus 1. We just go like that, and now we'll get Luna. Some of you might be thinking, okay, that's cool and all, but why? And I totally agree. You could make this a lot easier if you just did that, because this takes in a true or false value. So while count, and this time you say is less than our size, do this. Now let's see what happens. It works perfectly fine. The reason we say less than is because if we said more or equal to, count isn't currently more or equal to our size, it's 0. So once it goes here, it's going to say false and skip the loop. Another cool thing you can do is you can say if count is equal to, let's say, 2. Continue. And what this means is if count is the number 2, skip the rest of this loop and go to the next iteration. However, this will cause a little bit of a problem since count is there. So you'll notice, that's why nothing happened. Then we have to change that back to less than. So you'll notice once I run it, we just get that and then it just sticks there forever. It doesn't do anything. So you'll have to be careful with this because as you can see, the count is right there. So what you'll have to do is maybe move count till here. And since this right here is a little bit of a problem, since if count is 1, then this will cause problems. Since now we'll start at 1 instead of 0, you can just make this -1. So your logic has to change depending on where you put all of this. But if you run it, as you can see, it works perfectly fine. However, we did get a segmentation fault. And that is because this still ran one more time. So we can just do that. And now it won't cause that fault. You'll also notice item at index 3. So right here, Jack, Nick, item. So index 3 or 0, 1, 2. So it's going to be index 2 as well. But Mike is no longer here as well because continue skipped everything after it. So you can use continue to skip the rest of the loop and go to the next part of the loop. So it starts the loop over. That's what you can do. This also works with for loops. The same with break also works with for loops. So this is anything that works in a loop. Now you'll notice, let's say 5. So while count is less than 5. If we were to make count 5 itself, count will not, or this while loop will not be able to run unless it's at least 4 or lower. Then it will run at least once. But sometimes you have scenarios where you want the loop to run no matter if this right here is true or not. You want it to run at least once. In that scenario, you can do a do while loop right here. And now I can put this right here. And this means execute the code, then check if it's true. So this will run at least once, while the while loop, just normal while loop, will just skip it if it's false. This one will run it once at least, and if it's false, it will skip it. Now if we go like that, it will run, but also if we make this 5, then it will still run at least once, even though this right here says this. That is because do tells us that we want it to run at least once. So it's the same as a while loop, but this time it at least runs once. And that is it for while loops and for loops. Thank you all for watching. I hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see you all again in the next tutorial, where we'll be talking more about arrays.